Hey there, Jordan Sheridan, live with Tina Desiree Berg. We're working on it. It's still dark.
I'm staying in the bunker.
Yes, we're gonna have to get I don't know, some tech person out to your casa there. But at least we could hear you, see you, relatively speaking. Lot to casa there. Lot to get to today. At least we could hear you. Hold on. See you. Lot to get to today. Serious topics. Well, multiple serious topics, and one that we'll have some fun with too. Obviously, the January 6th hearing went on today. I don't know, what was it, the 5th or 6th? I didn't watch the whole thing, but I've seen kind of the major points, including it. Sure seems there's evidence of President Trump trying to obstruct justice. We'll have news on that. We also have developments with the Movement for a People's Party situation, which obviously we've reported on for a couple months. And recently, a woman came forward publicly to go on the record with her accusations against Nick Brana. And now Paula Jean Swearengin, who was with the People's Party, has also publicly come forward saying that she witnessed at least one instance of, I guess you would call it sexual abuse. I guess we could, once we get to that topic, discuss what it would be labeled. But at least one instance of Nick forcing himself on, we now know, Zaina Day, who was the executive director of MPP. I reached out to Nick, didn't respond. So gave him a chance to respond, didn't respond. But they're both important. I'm going to start with the attempted coup because I think that's pretty crazy. Tina, I got to say, we've spoken about this. And by the way, smash the like button, share this live stream. Super chats are welcome. But the more people that press the like button, the more people that will see the live stream. You and I have talked for a lot kind of about these quote unquote leftists who have minimized January 6th and saying, you could like be anti-democratic party, but not like make this out to be a walk in the park. It's weird. But the more stuff that comes out, the worse it is. So let's just start with, there's a lot that came out today, but let's just start with something that I think legally is potentially obstruction of justice. This is Liz Cheney, who I'm not a fan of, saying that they found evidence that Trump himself, not one of his allies, but Trump himself. I think your mic's off, Tina. Man, you can't get a break.
It's off in StreamYard.
Oh, it's off in StreamYard. Okay. Yeah, you have to unmute yourself in StreamYard. Oh, man, what a mess. What a mess. Hold on. There we go. So now we hear you. So what a mess.
Sorry.
So let's play.
I'm obviously not tech savvy. I have all this equipment and I don't know how to use any of it.
Hey, you're talking to the right. Thank God Colin's moving in a few months closer to me. So I'll have a tech person on hand. Anyway, let's play Liz Cheney, who is still a warmonger, and Dems cheering her. Shame on you. But let's play her basically describing, it seems, Trump tried to obstruct justice.
And one more item. After our last hearing, President Trump tried to call a witness in our investigation, a witness you have not yet seen in these hearings. That person declined to answer or respond to President Trump's call and instead alerted their lawyer to the call. Their lawyer alerted us, and this committee has supplied that information to the Department of Justice. Let me say one more time, we will take any effort to influence witness testimony very seriously. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
This is Trump, who infamously does not use email, does not text. He does call. I don't know who the witness is, but
Yeah.
if Trump is directly calling this witness, one would think this witness he's particularly spooked by.
Concerned. Yeah, exactly. That's.
I mean, I don't have any reason to believe they don't have evidence. They have phone logs and stuff like that.
Right.
And this goes beyond, because, I don't know, 2 hearings ago, Trump allies or people in his orbit called, I'm sorry, what was her name? Cassie Hutchinson? Or
Yeah.
Is that her name?
Hutchinson.
Cassie?
Yeah. She
Okay.
was. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's her first name, but whatever. Hutchinson, the former aide to Mark Meadows, allies of Trump tried to call her before her testimony to basically be like, the president reads transcripts, but this is Trump himself trying to do it. And here's the key thing. Remember, Tina, Mueller, his report found that they didn't find like collusion, which I said was bullshit all the time, but they did find that Trump tried to obstruct justice. But because he was the president and we have this backwards, I don't know, legal standard that you can't indict a president, they didn't go after him. But he's not president anymore, and that would be witness tampering, obstruction of justice. So to me, there's a lot of things that point to Trump, but this directly might implicate him criminally.
Yeah, and it's totally on brand. It's not shocking, actually. I'm just curious to know who this individual is and if they're going to testify next week.
Well, we could only speculate, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know who would be left. Meadows isn't talking.
He's not talking.
Could be Bannon, who finally agreed to.
I was thinking that was possible, actually.
It could be Bannon who finally agreed to testify, because apparently he was, a real tough guy until the orange jumpsuit came close. So could be Bannon. Who knows? I don't know. But what I do know is so far, when they've introduced stuff, they've backed it up in later hearings. So
So
that's,
it seems to me that they're going to do that for this reason you just specified. I doubt that they would bring this up as even part and parcel to an issue unless they were going to bring this person in next week. So I'm very curious to see who it is.
And there's another thing that I think kind of implicates Trump. Colin, do you have the clip where the congressperson is referencing that Trump and Steve Bannon spoke on the night of January 5th?
But their plan to object to the certification of the election on January 6th went forward anyway. The next day, on January 5th, the day before the attack on the Capitol, tens of thousands of people converged on Washington. While certain close associates of President Trump privately expressed concerns about what would occur on January 6th, other members of the president's inner circle spoke with great anticipation about the events to come. The committee has learned from the White House phone logs that the president spoke to Steve Bannon, his close advisor, at least twice on January 5th. The first conversation they had lasted for 11 minutes. Listen to what Mr. Bannon said that day after the first call he had with the president.
All hell is going to break loose tomorrow. It's all converging, and now we're on, as they say, the point of attack, right? The point of attack tomorrow. I'll tell you this. It's not going to happen like you think it's going to happen, okay? It's going to be quite extraordinarily different. And all I can say is strap in.
From those same phone logs, we know that the president and Mr. Bannon spoke again on the phone that evening, this time for 6 minutes. That same day...
Steve Bannon kind of looks like the Unabomber a bit, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's had some MK Ultra.
So, I mean, obviously Bannon's a bit of a charlatan. All these kind of political people who also have podcasts and shows are, but he didn't talk to Trump. I mean, I've broken stories on Flint where I got logs of phone calls. Yeah. A 1 minute call is one thing, an 11-minute call, you're on the phone for a while, and then you're going out saying all hell's going to break loose, and I have inside intel on what's going to happen. I don't know. I mean, they didn't jail any bankers after the financial crash. They never went after Bush and Cheney. So I've held fast that I would be shocked if Donald Trump was even prosecuted, much less
Right.
convicted. But I don't know if it was anyone else or a normal person, and there was evidence that they were calling witnesses,
They'd
or
be arrested. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. It seems obstruction of justice, and this could indicate coordination or kind of a being part of the planning, depending on, because part of the planning is also the messaging.
I
And,
agree.
what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. I thought it was also interesting. I don't know if you're going to talk about the Oath Keeper part yet. Should I hold back on that part?
No, go ahead.
Are you okay? So I also thought it was interesting what they were talking about, because clearly, he brings up the thing about the guillotine that's, or the noose, pardon me, that's in front there. They're talking about Mike Pence. And all of this works together because the whole point was that if
let's just describe for the audience. So an oath keeper. Colin, do we have that clip? I know I sent you a gazillion clips.
It's a legitimacy, that it was a path forward to move forward with his goals and agendas. I think we need to quit mincing words and just talk about truths. And what it was going to be was an armed revolution. I mean, people died that day. Law enforcement officers died this day. There was a gallows set up in front of the Capitol. This could have been the spark that started a new civil war, and no one would have won there. That would have been good for no one. He was always looking for ways to legitimize what he was doing, whether by wrapping it in the trappings of it's not a militia, it's a community preparedness team. We're not a militia, we're an educational outreach group. It's a veteran support group. But again, we've got to stop with this dishonesty and the mincing of words and just call things for what they are. He's a militia leader. He had these grand visions of being a paramilitary leader, and the Insurrection Act would have given him a path forward with that. The fact that the president was communicating, whether directly or indirectly, messaging, kind of that gave him the nod. And all I can do is thank the gods that things did not go any worse that day.
That's good. Or as Glenn Greenwald called it, just kind of a protest, right?
So he's referencing Stuart Rhodes, who is the leader of the Oath Keepers, and this guy here was also an Oath Keeper. Well, what?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the Oath Keepers, I think people need to realize that this is a far-right militia. So the way they see the world is that they're fighting the same as we did, originally at the beginning of the nation against the British Empire. It's sort of the same mentality now. So when they say, for example, the 3%ers, that although it's unfounded and untrue, that is a reference to the fact that they're saying that 3% of the population were willing to take up arms against the British government to fight for independence, right? So that is how they see this now. They think they're the good guys. They think they have the moral authority, and they think using starting an armed, militia and fighting against Congress is the right moral thing to do. And only 3% of the patriots out there are willing to do it because they're going to preserve the republic by doing so. Now, step back on the outside, you and I look at that and go like, wow, overturning a democracy is your idea of installing freedom. That's crazy, right? And it is, but that's how these guys see the world, and they were willing to act on it. So they had been talking for months about, bringing arms to the Capitol. And I'm surprised it took so long for people to sort of latch onto that idea that, yes, these individuals were armed. The week before, they talked about the fact that Trump asked them to remove the metal detectors so people could get in there with their arms. That I thought that was a big point that was being made, and it kind of fell under the radar a little bit. But it just goes to show that he was aware that they were armed. They were there. They found a box of Molotov cocktails with one of these guys, something else that's gotten very little attention. So no, they were definitely there, and they were willing to, fight and fighting against not only Congress, but Mike Pence, because if he didn't do what he was supposed to do, right, not certify the election, send it back to the states, then he was also now part and parcel to being part of the enemy, right? So that's what they wanted Mike Pence to do. He didn't do it, so they were going to go after him as well. It's kind of crazy, but this is not extreme speech that or hyperbole. This is like what these guys actually thought. I think it also bears to mention that many of these guys were part of either law enforcement, sheriff's department, or military. You know, they arrested 3 Oath Keepers here from California. One of them was the ex-police chief for La Habra. I have found...
What's La Habra?
It's a little town outside of the city of LA, Orange County area. But nonetheless, I mean, this is an ex-police chief, and he was... And I had videotaped him. His name is Alan. There was a Huntington Beach Trump rally maybe 3 weeks, I want to say, prior to January 6th. And this was the first time I was legitimately like, fuck, I'm going to get rocked by these guys here today by being here because they all hate the media. But Alan was there giving a speech. Dana Rohrabacher was there giving a speech. He is the ex-congressman that now lives in Maine, but he's originally from Orange County. And their language was really inflammatory. It was, this is a revolution. It's time to actually pick up arms and fight for the real revolution. It's 1776 all over again. We need to stop them from counting the ballots because they're stealing the election. And notice the original Stop the Steal rally flyers didn't say stop the steal. They said stop the count.
Oh, by the way, Tina, I forgot. We have to say this because apparently on YouTube, you cannot cover this without fear of YouTube taking you down. This status coup has covered and been consistent that Joe Biden won the election. President Trump lied. He did not win. It was not stolen. There was no steal. President Biden won the election. I don't like President Biden. He's a corrupt warmonger, but he won. But he won the election. There was no steal. And yes, we have to put that as a disclaimer so that if YouTube hears certain words or buzzwords and take us down, we have this where we're being clear. It was a lie. Sorry, Tina.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. So another thing that this Oath Keeper referenced was Clive Bundy. I don't know if you guys clipped that out, which I thought that was interesting. So he's now throwing back to Clive Bundy. For folks that don't remember, he was a right-wing militia guy who had the ranch, and his cattle was grazing on public land, and the public land was trying to charge him for the grazing fees. He didn't want to pay the grazing fees. I'm boiling it down more or less. But it ended up in a standoff, between FBI agents and Bundy and all of his militia buddies. And they were absolutely legitimately pointing guns at each other at a certain point during this thing. And so now, interestingly enough, Clive Bundy's, I don't know if it's son or some family member, I've seen him in a lot of these photos with these guys. So Bundy is still very much around and alive and part of this militia movement.
Enough is enough.
So my concern is this. So you have a bunch of, sheriffs are involved in this, and they, they're seeing themselves as the moral authority here. We have every right to stop, the certification of this election because our guy won. And, that's really dangerous. Even if you think this entire thing is political theater, and I'm going to say, yes, absolutely, there's some political theater involved here. The point that should concern you is that these were folks that were willing to basically buck what's left of our democracy and install their person as our authoritarian dictator kind of a person. I don't think that's up for debate at this point. And that should concern everybody.
Well, I have to argue with you on one thing because we don't have a democracy. But they tried to.
I would say what's left of our democracy.
Yes, so we don't have a democracy. The Electoral College means we don't have a democracy.
We have a representative democracy.
Right, we have a corrupt government that is purchased. So yeah, we don't have a traditional democracy. But I think what you're pointing out, they tried to at least overthrow one of the last vestiges of what should be a democracy, which is a peaceful transition and that
of power. Yeah,
correct.
So. Jordan, my thing is this. I want to increase our democracy in this country. I think we should get rid of the Electoral College. I think that we should have one vote for president. Each person has one vote, and it's won by popular vote. I think there's many things that we should be doing to increase democracy in the country. I also think we need to obviously do something about the, plutonymy and corporate rule. But having said that, I can still see quite clearly the danger of kind of pretending like what happened on January 6th was no big deal, because it actually was.
Right. I agree, Ira. We need ranked choice voting. And that
Yeah.
actually, the key.
Oh,
the
yeah,
key-
100% ranked choice. I agree with that too.
and way more than 2 parties. I'd want 6 or 7 to start.
Oh,
But
yeah, 100%.
I think the key of what that oath keeper said, and this kind of knocks down, like, you know, the Michael Tracy's of the world, the Glenn Greenwalds of the world, of course, the
Right.
Fox News people of the world who just said, oh, it was a protest that got out of hand. Or Glenn said, why are we talking about this? I mean, I always said the media coverage 24/7, like 6 months later, was too much. But I'm not against covering the investigation, covering the hearings, because it wasn't like a little protest that got out of control. The oath keeper guy is telling you the plan was an armed revolution. That means overturning the government. That was the plan.
There's also video where you can see where Gina from Beverly Hills, in some of her video, you see the guy standing next to her saying to everybody, if you have a weapon, now is the time for you to come forward and with your weapon. We need guys with the weapons to the front. If you're not participating, go to the back. I mean, I remember seeing that, you know, in a week and a half after this thing happened, and when I started going through the video and like just being really like stunned by that. I'm like, wait a second. This guy's basically saying that he knows there's people there that are armed with weapons and he wants them to come forward. And they had already smashed one of the windows open. So, you know, they were going inside the Capitol at that point through the window. And so he was trying to, you know, get guys with weapons to come forward into the Capitol building. That's really alarming. Right. How is that not alarming? I mean,
it is, but it's become a cottage industry among some like leftists to just kind of minimize fascism and authority.
Which I don't understand.
Because if it doesn't involve the Democratic Party, it's not worth talking about. I mean, I don't know. I'm radical, I guess. I think you can cover the Democratic Party and call them corrupt and criticize them and be critical. We probably are 70-30 here in terms of focused on the Democratic Party 70% of the time. But to just like, oh, this is normal that people had guns and tanks and bombs and
listen, if Antifa had been doing the same thing, what do you think would have happened?
Oh, I could tell you what, Fox News, Glenn Greenwald, Michael Tracy would be leading the hearings.
They would not only we wouldn't have even made it to the hearings. They would have been out there with their AK, whatever assault. Yeah. The cops would have been shooting people, live rounds, more than they already had been.
So I want to move. I want to move.
Pretty minimal, I think, compared to.
I want to move it. I want to move it along because I only have to till 6, and we have to do another topic too. But I want to play, and this will be fun, and we'll get the sound effects in and all that. So there was an exchange where there was a recounting of a scene in the Oval Office with Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, some of the crazier people telling Trump that, like, I don't know, what was it? Cuba was working with somebody or to hack machines and all this shit. Again, YouTube, that was a lie. Sidney Powell's a liar. That didn't happen. No. But this is just, I mean, it's crazy. It's like
it's Cuba and Hezbollah and like whatever other boogie.
So this is a scene like out of a Saturday Night Live skit. But let's play Colin, them describing. I think they talked to the White House lawyer Pat Cipollone, who described what happened too. Let's play some of that.
Well, first of all, the overstock person, I've never knew who this guy was. Actually, the first thing I
should have said, it was Michael Flynn, the head of Overstock.com, and Sidney Powell.
Wait, the head of Overstock.com. I missed that. That's bizarre.
came to the Oval Office without an appointment or something like that. So that's who he's talking about. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, first of all, the overstock person, I've never knew who this guy was. Actually, the first thing I did, I walked in, I looked at him, and I said, "Who are you?" And he told me. I don't think any of these people were providing the president with good advice, and so I didn't understand how they had gotten in.
In the short period of time that you had with the president, did he seem receptive to the presentation that you were making?
He was very interested in hearing particularly about the CISA finding and the terms of 13848 that apparently nobody else had bothered to inform him of.
And I was asking, like, you claim the Democrats were working with Hugo Chavez, Venezuelans, and whomever else. And at one point, General Flynn took out a diagram that supposedly showed IP addresses all over the world, and IP who was communicating with whom via the machines, and some comment about like Nest thermostats being hooked up to the internet.
So it's been reported that during this meeting, Ms. Powell talked about Dominion voting machines and made various election fraud claims that involve foreign countries such as Venezuela, Iran, and China. Is that accurate?
Sure.
Was the meeting tense?
Oh, yeah. It was not a casual meeting.
Explain.
I mean, at times there were people shouting at each other, hurling insults at each other. It wasn't just sort of people sitting around on a couch, like chit-chatting.
Do you recall whether he raised to Ms. Powell the fact that she and the campaign had lost all of the 60 cases that they had brought in litigation?
Yes, he was that.
And what was the response?
I don't remember what she said. I don't think it was a good response.
Cipollone and Hirschman and whoever the other guy was showed nothing but contempt and disdain of the president.
Yeah, the three of them were really sort of forcefully attacking me verbally. Derek, and we were pushing back, and we were asking one simple question as a general matter. Where is the evidence? So,
what response did you get when you asked Ms. Powell and her colleagues, where's the evidence?
A variety of responses.
Anything along those lines being said by President Trump?
I do. That sounds right.
I think that it got to the point where the screaming was completely out there. I mean, you got people walk in, it was late at night, it had been a long day, and what they were proposing, I thought was nuts.
I'm gonna categorically describe it as, you guys are not tough enough. Or maybe I put it another way, you're a bunch of pussies. Excuse the expression, but I'm almost certain the word was used.
Flynn screamed at me that I was a quitter and everything, kept on standing up and turning around
All
and
right,
screaming at me.
you get the point.
It's so laughable.
Enough
I love the guy
is
saying
enough.
it was nuts. I'm like, yeah, nuts
Enough
is a good word.
is enough.
Come on, I mean, the conspiracy theories.
Come on, man.
Really?
Yeah, boy, I think that it just kind of goes to show you, honestly, of course, in society, in every circle of life, there's going to be kind of the crazies. I've seen it, but it kind of, you have to go back 7 years.
Yeah.
The media elevated Donald Trump.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Because Donald Trump
did
was
the DNC with their Pied Piper strategy. Nobody thought that, everybody thought he was a clown and nobody would ever take him seriously. But
right, and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton pushed their minions in the media to give Donald Trump more airtime, to elevate Donald Trump because they wanted her to face him. But Donald Trump, don't forget, he was the one who's launched the birther movement. So whether he believes this stuff or not, who knows? Sometimes people start out not believing things, but they're such sociopaths and crazy people that you repeat the lie, then they believe it's true. But
I think Sidney Powell definitely believes this crazy stuff.
Right, but Donald Trump, the media gave him $5 billion in free advertising to become president when he had launched the birther movement, when he had pushed conspiracy after conspiracy. And it goes to show that he, I think in the hearing today, they said Trump was about to name Sidney Powell's special prosecutor. So I got to tell you, I think the worse it gets for Trump, I think the deadline for him to announce he's running moves up. There are polls coming out. There was a poll today that came out, New York Times, Siena, that has Trump at 49%. Death Santes at 25%.
49%. God damn.
For Trump.
I mean, yeah, no,
Trump,
I get it.
Trump was doing particularly poorly among the college educated Republicans. He's still doing strongly among non-college educated, and he was doing poorly among, I think it was under 35 maybe, so younger Republicans. I still think Trump would defeat DeSantis unless something even worse comes out.
Yeah.
I think the media is doing basically what they did for Trump in 2015 and 16 for DeSantis, and are framing him as like the less toxic version of Trump. Well, no, he's pretty toxic, DeSantis.
He's pretty toxic.
And his policies arguably are worse than Trump's, because he's doing culture war stuff on steroids, but his economic policy is just as bad. But anyway, that's not all of the major things from this hearing, because I didn't watch the whole thing. But that gives you kind of a sample. The main things I would say are Trump tampering with a witness, or trying to, because the witness didn't answer the phone, and that has been referred to the DOJ. So far, Robert Mueller, to borrow Rudy Giuliani's term, has been a giant pussy, in my opinion. Not Robert Mueller, I'm sorry. Merrick Garland. Not just on this, but on a lot of other things. I'm waiting for Joe Manchin to be prosecuted by the DOJ.
You've been waiting for a while.
Yeah. So then you have the Bannon thing, which to me shows that Trump is partaking in planning or telling him what to message.
Is aware of what's happening. In the very, he's aware.
Because how does Steve Bannon know it's not going to happen like you think, and this is going to be wild? He's talking to the president. And, you know, the Powell thing is just for fun. That was just a funny thing. So, yeah, if I missed something, I'm sorry. I didn't get to watch the whole hearing. I'm planning a road trip for next week. Reminder, folks, we're hitting the road next week. Going as of now, we're thinking Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, possibly Kentucky, wherever the wind takes us, to talk to the people, hear your stories on the ground, how inflation is killing economically is hurting you. You know, doesn't just have to be at inflation. I just had somebody to reach out to me in Pittsburgh about food pantry needs are way up in recent weeks. So again, if you have a story and you want to be interviewed in the flesh, info@statuscoup.com. It's kind of a loose path. We might hit other states, but probably starting in Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, and possibly Kentucky right now. All right, let's move on, because I only have you for a little bit more, Tina. Every time I say I'm done covering Movement for a People's Party, like there's another development that I can't ignore it. People have criticized me, like, Jordan, why are you covering this? Well, I don't know. I think that I broke certain stories. The fact that Nick Brana purged 5 board members. And I think it's more relevant to cover it because People's Party, as of now, is pushing a Jimmy Dore 2024 presidential campaign. That's neither here or there. If Jimmy wants to run for president, God bless him. I have opinions on that, but people can support him if they want. I don't think he technically could even run within the People's Party because they don't have any structure or ballot access or any infrastructure. But since the People's Party is pushing this, and a woman, as we talked about yesterday, Tina, came forward on the record to make accusations of sexual harassment and assault. We covered it yesterday. I was a guest earlier on Owen Higgins. He's an independent journalist. Podcast. He had me on his call-in episode about this whole thing. And Paula Jean Swearengin called in. Paula Jean ran for West Virginia Senate twice. Oh. She lost to Manchin in the primary in 2018. 2020, she won the primary, but lost in the general. And then she joined the People's Party, I think, as their West Virginia coordinator. Yeah. So she joined. She admits she's friends with Zaina Day. Zaina Day was the executive director for People's Party. And she was on the call. I didn't know she was going to say this. I had heard about this, that she says that she had witnessed something, but she had not gone forward yet. So let's play this clip. To be clear, I did reach out. Let me make sure I didn't miss an email. If he got back to me, I doubt it. did reach out to Nick Brana to give him a chance to respond, and he did not. All right, let's play this clip just to let you guys know it's pretty serious accusation and not for the faint at heart what you're about to hear.
Being Zaina's friend, I didn't know for a long time about the relationship. There was one instance when we were in New York. Nick had treated a volunteer very badly. I had my own grievances against him by the way he treated people and myself. And that was never rectified. But I walked in, basically, long story short, I walked into the room and I seen Nick Brana trying to push himself down on Zaina. I have been a colleague of Zaina's for probably almost 5 years now. When I ran for office, she was my communications director, and she was a liaison to my campaigns, both times. And I seen a person, no offense to Zaina, but I seen the mental stress that she was going through and seeing how she was about to break because this was so hard. I knew that he was pushing himself on her because there were several times in the middle of the night she would call and talk to me 6 hours because Nick would keep her on the phone late hours at night. Her daughter was hearing him asking her if he would, if she could have phone sex, even after they broke up. And I told her, you're going to have to go to the board, and she was afraid of retaliation, and retaliation immediately started. Nick grabbed on to one of the most divisive issues in the country, that was the vaccine mandates to divide the community even more and call us dim operatives because he was trying to cover up what was going on with him. During finance calls, I could hear the abuse. He abused me when we were out on the road. He talked down to me. He put me in very uncomfortable situations. And I was promised by the board that it would be taken care of. And the retaliation just got worse and worse and worse. And I kept on saying, this is not internally, but since Zaina spoke out now, this is not just sexual harassment. This is sexual assault. Something needs to be done. I was very uncomfortable. I finally ended up leaving. I ended up resigning because of the abuses that were going on with the retaliation. I seen everything that the volunteers had said in the past was true. And, there was no purpose in building the party. We spent a large amount of our time trying to platform Nick. Anytime we had live streams, anytime we had interviews, Nick wanted to be in the front of it, and he was super focused on Jimmy Dore. And, that's something that I was told, we're trying to build this, we're trying to get away from that, and it wasn't. I was on the phone one time 16 hours because he was trying to convince the board, and he was saying he was using my expertise as past experience as a candidate to run Cornel West as president and Jimmy Dore as vice president. For one, I don't know if Dr. West would have supported what was going on with the People's Party anymore because they were changing the language to identity politics. And, basically they don't have the infrastructure for a national campaign. They don't have the list to help a candidate. They don't have anything to lay the groundwork to have an effective campaign. So to me, it's just for fundraising. But I can tell you this, I'm a survivor of domestic abuse myself. And it took a really big mental toll on me too, to watch what went on within the organization. And I can't tell you why Nick and Rod support this. I cannot tell you why. There's sycophants out there that blindly support them no matter what. But within this movement, we cannot grow without accountability. And this is a huge, huge issue. My family was shook by what happened to Zaina. I'm not going to give all the details, but me and my partner went to Kentucky to be with her while she was going through all this, and he was going through all the smear campaigns and the podcast against her, and seeing the toll that it had not only on her, but her daughter and her family. It's criminal. It's absolutely criminal. And I'm not saying this just as her friend. I would say this about any woman. The abuse that Sabrina Pena-Young went through, she didn't even know about the sexual harassment or assault. There was deep retaliation against her. They even talked, negatively on Twitter about her family and her children. It's been absolutely brutal. And if anybody thinks about being a supporter of the People's Party, I'm not always right, but everybody knows that I tell my truth as much as I can. because, people are literally dying. The reason we want a new movement in this country and we want something better than what we have with our politicians right now. I live in Appalachia. I live in West Virginia. We lead in drug overdose deaths. I've buried more family members to coal mining than I can count. Our family's theme song is Amazing Grace. They do not want to talk about disenfranchised community members. There've been blatant racism and bigotry in the Slack. I mean, it's all been documented, and all this was documented. And the retaliation out of all my years in this movement, I've never experienced anything like this in my life. They slandered other staff members, and they paid us as contractors, even though they called us staff, and we were supposed to be at Nick's beck and call 24 hours a day. We were not treated right. Zaina definitely wasn't treated right. I felt sorry for Sabrina and all the volunteers that faced retaliation because of what happened with this organization. And I want people to look at it. Democrats have done it. Republicans have done it. If we don't have accountability in this movement and we don't listen to men and women that have been abused, then why are we doing this? People are dying every day and suffering these abuses. And Nick Brana needs psychiatric help. I'm not a mental professional, but I'm still trying to recover over what happened within the People's Party.
Absolutely. So thanks for that. That's a lot. I know that we're a little over time, but that's fine. We'll keep it open for just a sec here. I know that Jordan has a follow-up, so thank you, Paula Jean, for that. Jordan, go ahead. I know you had a follow-up or two to ask here.
Yeah. So I think what you just said is important because Nick Brana's basic defense for all of this has been that she doesn't have any screenshots, she doesn't have any proof that he did any of this. So you just described and whatever you're comfortable.
She has the phone records where he called her over and over and over. I can remember one occurrence, and this was after they dated. She was talking to me on the phone and locked herself out of her car. And he called her when I was on the phone with her, 10 times, and texting her and telling her if she was going to be away, that he had to let her know. He had to know what all of us were doing, especially Zaina, 24 hours a day. She was executive director, and she was not allowed to do her job. We spent more time putting out fires for Nick than we could do the actual work. And even going back to Elise, who come back out and supported Nick, when we were talking about the new onboarding infrastructure that we were all working hard on, she said she wanted no part of that. That was just jibber jabber. And she was already siding with Nick. And she
but can I don't want to cut you off, but I want to just drill down specifically. So as much as you're comfortable sharing, did you say that in New York you had walked in on Nick and Zaina in a room and Nick was trying to force a sexual act?
We had a volunteer there that had got lost on the train, and I had tried to wake Nick up to say, hey, we have to make sure this person needs to get where they need to go because they had lost their wallet and they already had a hard time. And, you take care of your volunteers first and foremost. And I went back upstairs to try to get Nick to help this person. And when the door was unlocked and when I opened up the door, he was on top of her. And I know her really well. I've worked with her for years. I've traveled with her to a lot of places. And I shut the door real quickly because I didn't want the volunteer to see what was going on. And I could talk to her about it later. But the look on her face when they opened back up the door, the whole entire situation was wrong.
So from what you saw, this was not something she was consenting to?
Not well. I can't say I wasn't there, but the look on her face looked as if she wasn't consenting. She looked like she was shook. And I'm telling you, I've known her for a long time, and just to experience, I've traveled across the country with her. I have been with her in professional spaces, and just to see how she was, just her reactions to everything. It was like she was even afraid to talk around Nick. Even when we were out with Occupy Congress, he had her and Nick were almost an hour late to the protest, and people were getting mad. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, he had to stop me and talk to me about our relationship and how I don't compromise for an hour. It was just that stuff all the time. Like I said, I wasn't in the room, but I'll never forget the look on her face.
And did you two have a conversation about it after, where she described it as assault?
She said that he was trying to push himself on her, and she was trying to say no, and she thanked me for coming when I did.
So she described it to you as sexual assault.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
She described it to you as an assault.
Yes, and that, and this is just two occurrences. I know of another, and I'm going to respect her and not tell her, not give up more information. But this was ongoing for a long time, and she has a 12-year-old daughter, and I know for a fact, hearing from her daughter, that she heard on several occasions where Nick was trying to push phone sex on her, even when they weren't together.
And lastly, obviously, that's a serious accusation. He might point out that you're friends, that you haven't come forward with this. So what would you say, if he pushes back that you're just her friend
Out of
and you're
respect
making
for
this up?
Zaina, I did not come forward with this. I've spoke as much as possible out of respect for her and other people, but I can tell you firsthand that I also experienced verbal abuse and pushing boundaries from Nick Brana and myself. I had my own personal grievances that were ignored. And the reason I didn't speak out is because, it's up to the victim to tell their story. I'm not here to tell her story, but I'm here to say I believe it because I was there and I seen not only how he abused her, but he abused other people.
All right. So I wanted to play that. To play that full thing. If you'll allow me, Tina, just because I think it's important. Paula pointed out that she didn't come forward because she didn't want to. Zaina had not come forward. But Zaina herself has not said this that I know of. So I reached out to her just to get her side of it. And she sent me an email. So we just have it to show. Colin. So Paula Jean, this is from Zaina Day, who on Friday went on Sabi Saab show and shared her story of accusations against Nick Brana of sexual harassment and assault. This is her as far as what Paula Jean just shared. Paula Jean, I, Nick, and a volunteer were sharing a room in New York when we were there for the AOC protest. Nick slept in the same bed as the volunteer. I shared a bed with Paula Jean. The day before, the volunteer had lost their cell phone and their wallet, so they needed a ride to the train depot. Paula Jean and the volunteer went downstairs to wait for Nick and me to wake. I was attempting to wake Nick several times. He said that I should text the volunteer to get a taxi. We, quote, shouldn't have to give him a ride, Nick said, according to Zaina. Finally, Nick woke up after Paula called several times. I was frustrated because I was stressed that a volunteer was being treated in this manner, and we only had a certain time frame to get them to the bus station. After dressing, I was going to go downstairs to meet Paula and the volunteer. Nick started saying that he wanted to have sex, that it could be quick. I said no. He said it a couple times again. I said no. We needed to leave, that Paula and the volunteer were waiting, and I was worried about the time. Nick grabbed my arms and started to push me onto the bed. He was laughing, but I did not find this funny. It did scare me, and I was struggling. I didn't know what would happen next, if he was being playful or just aggressive. I was getting frustrated, saying no and struggling to get away so we could leave. Paula Jean opened the door at that moment. I was, can you go back? I didn't know, back one. I didn't know what would happen next, or if he was being playful or just aggressive. I was getting frustrated, saying no and struggling to get away so we could leave. Paula Jean opened the door at that moment. I was relieved. Later, I told her that I was relieved that she came into the room because the incident was scary. I told her I didn't know if he was just trying to play with me or being aggressive, but that I had said no several times, and he still grabbed my wrists and pushed me onto the bed and was climbing on top of me. I felt it was clear that I wasn't playing around. I told her that I was concerned because he seemed to have a disregard for boundaries for myself and a lack of concern for the volunteer and Paula too. I apologized to her for everything that had happened and apologized for how she and the volunteer were treated. So, Tina, I just want to say, I hate that I have to always say this, but like I do have experience with this. I was accused of something years ago, and I take this very seriously because I was actually falsely smeared, and I didn't know, but you were shown messages that showed that the woman making the accusation against me was lying. That was, I think, before you even knew me, or
yeah, long before I knew you.
yeah. So I'm kind of sensitive to. I don't just believe immediately anybody. I want to know facts, right? And Nick Brana has a right to defend himself or deny it. I emailed Zaina's statement to him. He did not respond. So, I think that it's important when eyewitnesses come forward, because they're either telling the truth or they're lying. And if they were lying, you'd have to ask, well, why would this person make this up, right? It's a serious thing to make up an accusation like this. And depending on what you're saying, you could be sued. So based on my reporting on Nick, separate from the assault allegations, the harassment allegations, he has lied repeatedly, separate from these accusations. So I don't find him credible. I wasn't there, but this is now Zaina come forward and Paula obviously saying she witnessed this. To be clear, from what it sounds like to me, there was not that this is, I'm not minimizing it, but he didn't, there's not an accusation he raped her, but he was forced, he was, according to Zaina and
Paula, being aggressive, overly aggressive. And this was after they broke up, right?
I believe that. I'm not sure about. I'm not sure about that. I mean, it doesn't matter whether they were together or not.
I understand, but I was.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just think, number one, the most important thing is people have to, I'd like to know what you think, because to me, people have to view, I mean, she's on camera. Zaina did a long interview with Savi Sabs. People could judge whether they find her credible. And Paula, she's not on camera, but she's saying she witnessed this. And she's saying she didn't come forward because Zaina hadn't come forward. That sounds plausible to me. Why she wouldn't?
Listen, Jordan, it's more than plausible. So as a woman, I'm going to take a different tact than you. I tend to believe most women right off the top when they tell these stories, because as a woman, I've seen them myself. I've experienced them myself. A lot of times, back in the 90s, the stuff that would go on wouldn't happen today. But back then there was this idea like, oh, it's nothing, get over it, boys will be boys. Like, if some dude was, pushing you around, getting on top of you on the bed, whatever. I could tell some tales of things that happened in the green room, for example. So I tend to believe most women when they tell these stories because they are entirely believable to me. I think the difference is now in 2022, these things are much less tolerated, which is a good thing. And I think because of that, women are much more emboldened to come forward and tell their stories and say, this wasn't okay. This is what happened to me. So, Nick, dude, totally unacceptable behavior. Like, what is wrong with men when they don't respect a woman's boundaries? If she's saying no to you, no means no. It doesn't mean yes, let's be more playful, or yes, I'm going to push you down, or yes, I'm going to just convince you at some point that your no is going to be a yes because I'm hearing yes, yes, yes. That's what I want to hear.
Well, I just want to be clear so people don't get twisted how I view these things. I'm kind of like I do believe women when they come out. But I don't.
I'm saying we tend
I am inclined to believe a woman, but based on my experience, I then want to know the facts.
Oh, 100%. Understandable. Right.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, I hate to use Ronald Reagan, but it's like trust but verify. And the truth is, a lot of times there is no evidence, and it's just he said, she said. A lot of abusers don't put it in writing, are calculated that way, and so sometimes
that's part of the problem. We need to talk about that as a society, right? So sometimes women simply don't come forward from their stories because they know they're going to be called a liar. They know they're not going to be believed. Why go through all of that emotional trauma to have that be the outcome, right? So this is such a complex and complicated problem that we have as a society. And honestly, I would like to see young men just get to a mentality where they understand that this kind of aggressive behavior is totally unacceptable. Just don't do it. Like,
Right.
let's just start with that, you know?
Well, I also think, forget for a second what Paula Jean is saying she witnessed, which I don't have any reason to not believe it.
I believe
Forget that for a second. I mean, he was her boss.
it's totally unacceptable. Yeah.
They're in a consensual relationship, but like, according to Zaina, he's blurring the lines of the relationship where, hey, you need to compromise in the relationship. And if you don't, I don't know how this is going to work professionally. I mean, that's just an abuse of power where it's almost coercion.
100% abuse of power. Correct.
And also, like we went through yesterday, I mean, unless you're like the biggest cultist of MPP and Nick Brana could be shown shooting someone on Fifth Avenue Trump style, and you'll say he didn't do it. I mean, we played the tape. Savs played the tape. I played the tape. He was going to be punished by the board, and he said they found nothing. So there's evidence that he lied repeatedly, that the investigation found nothing, that they found that Zaina was lying, that they found that it was politically motivated. That's a lie. And there's audio that exists showing board members reading to Zaina, these are the punishments that we have arrived at, which were he would be barred from staff meetings for 6 months. He would not be able to supervise anyone one-on-one for 6 months. He would have to take sexual harassment training. I believe it was management training or something like that. There was one other thing. I mean, a board wouldn't come to those conclusions if you did nothing wrong.
Exactly.
And he just doubled down after the audio was played. He just continued to double down with basically the same statement from months ago, only recycled. So it just strains credibility at this point. And I would say, let's be real, Jimmy Dore has given Nick Brana a whole lot of airtime. Jackson Hinkle has given Nick Brana a whole lot of airtime to push his version of things without any pushback. And I'm not blaming Jimmy Dore or Jackson Hinkle for anything Nick Brana might have did, but they can't just go silently into the night now when the woman has come forward. There's now someone saying, I witnessed something that he did. I'm sure, usually Brana takes a day or two to come out with like a tweet thread saying, it's debunked and they're Dem Party operatives. The last thing
Paula Jean a Dem Party operative. Come on now.
Right. The last thread that he put up, so-called debunking Zaina, I put up a thread then debunking him because I had screenshots to show the very people he was putting forward as like exonerating him had
done the opposite. Yeah.
Right. So I just think, and to me, this goes well beyond like a third party. Like I think we're both for a third party. To me, this goes
third and fourth parties. I'm for more democracy. So
to me, this is no longer about like moving for a people's party.
No, it's not. It's about just wrong behavior. We should call out wrong behavior no matter where it occurs.
Right. And people could support MPP if they want or not, whatever. But you have to just look at it common sense. Like this organization is run by Nick and his father. I mean, how do you call that a people's party when it's centralized based on volunteers I've spoken to, sources I spoke?
We should say minus the state parties that are now being run separately.
Right, but the national party is Nick's father is the treasurer. Nick and his father control the money, and it seems like they essentially have 3 or 4 board members that they did not purge that are just kind of go along with whatever they want. So I don't know how this is going to play out. I don't know I got an email today from somebody, not about sexual abuse, but another person accusing him of verbal abuse and mistreatment. So it seems like there's a trail here of not just sexual stuff, but mistreatment of volunteers, workers. And at the end of the day, if you're the People's Party, then you have to answer to the people. So I don't know. And I think it's relevant, Tina. Again, I'm not trying to make this about Jimmy. It's not on Jimmy what Nick did or didn't do. But if MPP is doing this campaign to get Jimmy Dore to run for president, and people are then donating to MPP, I think it's relevant to hear from Jimmy, because Jimmy just said, this is what the Dem Party does. They put infiltrators. It's like, what do you, like, this is like the same thing where like somebody did a video of Jimmy that guy Sean, who did like a long video kind of critical of Jimmy with best hits of Jimmy.
No idea.
And Jimmy said he's probably paid by the CIA. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So I think Jimmy Jackson, again, they're not responsible for what Nick did or didn't do, but they did have him on to push these on the investigation part lies. And it seemed that they were suggesting that this accuser is lying without hearing from her. Well, now she's gone forward. I don't know if she would want to go on those shows, so that's not up to us. But we should hear from them. And I also would like to hear from people who at one point were on the advisory board, whether they're still on the advisory board, whether they're still involved, because it doesn't necessarily mean, Tina, that MPP needs to close down. I mean, I'm not calling for that. But
they obviously need to do something, though. And, you know, I guess what would have been a better and more obvious outcome is if Nick had just done a mea culpa and said, maybe my behavior was out of bounds. I apologize. Let me work on that. Like, if he had done that sort of a thing in response instead of what he's done instead, I think people are generally open to genuine forgiveness and understanding about situations. Obviously, there's a bridge too far if there's sexual assault involved. That's just something else. But I see my point is I don't see him in any way, shape, or form showing any remorse for any of these things. And that bothers me.
The thing is here, in my case, I hate to bring it up again, but I think it's relevant. In my case, I had 2 eyewitnesses come forward saying we were actually in the room and what this woman is accusing did not happen. So I had 2 eyewitnesses to say, okay,
I got you.
I had 2 eyewitnesses say this didn't happen, which usually it is a he said, she said. I never released them publicly, but you saw them. There was a shit ton of messages between me and the woman, very clearly showing that, I don't want to relitigate it, but very clearly showing that after she accused me of this, she was literally throwing herself at me.
That's that wasn't the thing that came to me. I was sent screenshots from a private message room in which her and a handful of other individuals, including this person that leaked these to me, were discussing lying about what happened and taking you down. Their goal was to take you down. So, and this was long before you and I had ever met. And I remember just seeing these screenshots of these and then getting them authenticated and thinking like, wow, this is really messed up. I was pretty angry. I was angry as a woman. I think it's really important that people don't lie about things when it comes to harassment and assault, because there's already a preponderance in society to not believe women when they're telling the truth about he said, she said situations, and women need to be able to feel safe in those environments. And when somebody does this, it just sort of adds ammunition to these people saying, see women lie, right? Which is really damaging. It's damaging to every victim out there that is looking for some sense of justice, right? So,
well, I brought my situation up as a kind of.
Well, you should talk about it. I think.
Only because, like, in my case, I think eyewitnesses matter either way. If they're affirming or knocking something down, I had eyewitnesses. Paula is coming forward saying she walked in. Now,
right.
If there's evidence out there that Paula Jean is a habitual liar and whatever, people could come forward with that. But when you have eyewitnesses to something, that matters. And number 2, in my case, there were messages.
Paula has absolutely nothing to gain by lying about this, or even coming forward and telling this. Like, she has nothing to gain. If anything, she has the opposite. Like, this could, bring her some blowback. So.
And in my case, there were no messages of me harassing anyone in writing, because I didn't. But there were also messages showing an opposite tale. So I just think people need to separate. There is evidence that Nick has lied about other stuff, including that 5 board members were purged. He's lied about what the investigation found. And by the way, when they removed these board members, several of the board members had changed their recommendations from like 6-month suspension or this and that to him having to be removed as chair. That's when they were abruptly. So again, Nick and his father are the chair of the board and the treasurer. So how can you have a democratic process where there could be accountability if him and his daddy are running things? So, kudos to Zaina, Paula, for going forward. Again, I emailed Nick. He didn't respond to me, so I gave him the chance to comment. Tina, I know you have to go. I have another interview to do now, so thank you, Tina, for joining us. I'll see you next week. All right, everybody, smash that like button. Don't go anywhere. We have a series that we're calling Status Screwed, playoff of Status Coup. And I love when regular viewers reach out with their stories. Obviously it's not fun to tell stories of people being economically screwed, but you're not going to see these really on CNN or any corporate outlets. Colin, do we have the animation? It's okay if we don't. God, I love that. Colin's work, really, he deserves a Pulitzer if there was one for corporate greed animations. But joining me now is Allie. Sorry that you had to wait. I know you're supposed to come on a couple minutes earlier. Thanks for joining me. And you had reached out to me and have quite the story that kind of predated inflation. It's been going on for a long time, but inflation has certainly made it worse. Single mother, recently got out of treatment, mental health treatment a couple years ago. No insurance right now. So that's kind of the first parts, but I don't want to tell your story. So why don't you share like what made you reach out to me and what you've been dealing with, particularly, that worsened due to the inflation.
So like you said, I got out of mental health treatment a couple years ago, and that was something that I had been dealing with for a long time, and was really struggling during that time. At one point, I had lost my roommate and had to take on a second job, and it was just like between all of the jobs and trying to be a mom and trying to take care of my mental health, it all just kind of came together and I couldn't handle it anymore. So I did decide to get treatment. I was in there for probably 4 or 5 months, and I have to say that it was the best decision that I've ever made in my life. I am a completely new person since I have been able to get that, and so I feel incredibly lucky that I was able to get access to those resources at that time. And then obviously, so I got out of that late 2019. I had to give up my home previously in order to get to afford the treatment. So when I got out, I was supposed to stay with a friend and for a couple months while I got it back on my feet. And then that ended up not working out. And I was homeless for a couple of months until I found the most recent place that I'm at in early 2020. So I moved in here, like I said, early 2020, and it was within 2 or 3 weeks that the pandemic had hit.
Can I move backwards for a second? When you were homeless, were you homeless with your child at the time?
No. So actually, while I was in treatment, side thing that I was dealing with is, so I had come out as queer a little bit before the time that I was in the hospital, and my son was actually staying with my dad at the time. And then once I came out, I started having a lot of problems with them, and them trying to control what I could talk to my son about, where I could take him. I wasn't allowed to take him to parades or, anything that they deemed as inappropriate. And so he was staying with them at that time while I was homeless. And the plan initially was that he was going to stay with them until I had gotten out and gotten back on my feet. And then they decided while I was in there that they were going to go behind my back and take me to court and get custody of my son. So I came back, and not only was I dealing with all of the stuff, but so he was staying with them. Long story short, he was staying with them while I was out of a house for a little while. And then the plan all along was that once I got the house and was back on my feet, that, he would come home and everything would go back to normal. And that wasn't the case. I did get a new place within about 3 months of getting home. And once I got in there, it started a whole, on top of the pandemic, dealing with that. I was also going through custody battles at the time of my parents trying to basically say that because I'm queer or because I was trying to take my son to pride parades, or I allowed him to dress as a girl character for Halloween, that I was like basically abusing him and just tried to like say all these lies about me.
I hope
and
you.
used-
I hope you don't live in Texas because they'll come after you criminally for.
Oh my
such a thing.
gosh. Yeah, no, thank God I don't live in Texas. Thank God I live in a state where I didn't have to worry so much about that actually impacting it. And when I did go through the court system and my lawyers, like everybody recognized what they were doing for exactly what it was and didn't hold like any of that against me. So I'm very lucky that I was in a state where I didn't have to worry about that.
Mhm. Okay, so you're homeless. Tell me about that, because was that after the mental health treatment?
Yes, that was after. So like I said, I came home and I had arrangements planned. And I was there for probably about a week before things just didn't work out. And then that was the point that I was like legitimately homeless. So I did kind of couch surf for a couple of weeks until I found a place that I could stay temporarily. But the place that I was staying at was like under construction. There was constantly people walking in and out. So like I had a place to lay my head so that I wasn't legitimately sleeping in the streets or in my car. But that experience in and of itself, being in that place, not having privacy, having people walk through my stuff, having to like cook food in the midst of dust everywhere, was an experience in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. And I'd love to know, because the time frame you're talking about, that's like 2020.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting to hear at that time, Biden gets elected. Of course, there was the election shit, but then Biden gets in, and all of a sudden the economy's coming back, and the economy's booming 2020, 2021. And I was on a road trip during that time talking to homeless people being evicted. And I'm like, who the fuck is the economy booming for?
Right.
I wonder what you think, having experienced homelessness, and I'm sure meeting all sorts of people in the streets, the alternate reality that is often framed by our corporate media.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I definitely agree with you that it's like this double narrative. And something that I kind of, I liken it to, like an abusive relationship. When you're in an abusive relationship, they gaslight you and they give you an alternate reality and make you question and feel like everything is your fault and it's your individual problem and you're the issue. And that's how I feel like it is nationally too. Like we did have Biden come in and they started, there were good things that happened in the beginning that seemed like maybe there was some hope that he was going to actually do something for regular people. But obviously that didn't last very long. Less than a year. So I mean, it's the same thing on the ground now. And, and I'm dealing it with it in my city too, where they're off traveling the country, talking about how great things are and how much economic development and the plans for the future. But then if you look around, like everybody here is struggling and begging the city and begging people for help and for programs or, outreach to be able to help people kind of make it through this time. But so it's the same dynamic there. And it's just, they're all in their own little bubble. I mean, it does not even kind of match the reality on the ground.
Right. Okay. So take me a little bit forward. You were homeless and then you got a new job, and, tell me what happened next.
Yeah. So I moved into this place about March 2020. And
you're in Illinois, right?
Yes, I'm in Illinois. Yeah. I'm a Chicago suburb. So I'm about an hour away from the city. So I got this place and things did start looking up. I got a new job. I actually got like a 30% raise with this job. And then around the same time, I was able to get through the court systems, get my son back. Everything was really looking good, for the, upcoming years. And to back up a little bit, I have been trying to go to school since I got out of high school, and I did go to community college and was able to pay for that. But now that I need my university degree, I can't afford it. I don't make enough, I don't get enough in financial aid to help. And it's basically like you need a degree to get a job that pays you enough, but you need a job that pays you enough to get the degree, or you have to decide to take on the debt. And with me, between the medical debt and the legal bills and all that kind of stuff, I mean, that's just completely out of the realm of possibilities. So there's already like this limit on, unless you get really lucky, on where you can go. But anyways, I was really excited about this new job. Everything was looking up. I was really, I have a lot of debt from the previous years, like I said. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to be able to pay down this debt. I'm going to be able to afford my rent. And I will be able to put a little bit of money away, putting us on like a better track. And one of the big things is that, during the last, so my son is 8, and during the last 8 years since he's been born, we have had to move a lot because of just different economic reasons, rent getting raised, or, there was one end of a relationship and, just normal life stuff. So when I got here, I really, really wanted to stay here. We're in a good school district. There's lots of kids in the neighborhood for my son to play with. Like it's just all around, like end of 2020 things, even though things in the world sucked, things in my life were better. I did have this new job. Things economically were going to be better in the future. I had gotten the mental health care that I needed and was able to cope with, some of the stuff that was going on when I got home. And yeah, like I said, everything looked good until it was about like January this year when things really started to kind of slowly sink down course. I would say the beginning of the year, January, February, I was feeling okay. February is when, no, I don't remember. It was like around the time the Ukraine war and stuff started is when I felt like things really started to like escalate for me. At that point, food prices are starting to rise, and my car broke down. And now, not only did my car break down, but there's 4 or 5 different things wrong with it. It needs new tires, new starter, new timing belt, new catalytic converter. I also need dental work done. I also lost my insurance when I turned 27, which was last February. And now
good old Obamacare, right?
It's lovely. It's lovely. Yeah.
We'll give you a Republican healthcare plan until 26. Yep.
Love it. And my son has healthcare because he's covered under the state, but they won't cover me. They say that I make too much for me personally to have health insurance. And so, I knew this before I lost the health insurance when I was debating, but I had looked at the prices of the medicine and stuff like that and felt like, it's a pretty common medicine, so it's not very expensive to pay out of pocket. But what I didn't think about at the time was the fact that you have to go see the doctor at least twice a year to get refill authorizations. And so even though I can afford the medication, I can't afford the doctor's visits to get the refills. So now on top of everything that I'm dealing with just the financial uncertainty and whether I'm going to have a car soon, I am unable to really pay for my mental health meds. And I have started to ration them recently, where I'm now taking them every other day, just to, because if I can't, I could try and self-wean, but this is the type of medication that if you wean off of it, the withdrawal symptoms are just unbearable. So I'm basically just taking enough to stave off the withdrawal symptoms.
And this is medication for a physical or a mental?
For my mental health.
Okay. And
obviously
you're getting off the medication because you can't afford it, or because you don't think you need it?
Because I can't afford it. Yeah, I'm honestly terrified about the medicine situation because I haven't been off of it since I've been home. I have no idea, I feel like I'm doing better, my coping skills, all that stuff, but I don't know what my brain is going to be like. There are just legitimate chemical stuff. And it's not just normal depression, it's, PTSD. So it's,
I want to share my story. I mean, I've told the audience a little bit, but this isn't to scare you, but I think you should hear this because this is why we do these stories, because this is outrageous. that she has to risk her mental health because of money. So for me, as a kid, I had depression, nothing like, I grew up like middle class, good parents. I just think genetically I was predisposed to it. It was pretty low grade. They put me on medication. Then my senior year of college, I had like my first, I would say, like manic depressive state. I just couldn't get out of bed. They drugged me up. Like I was like knocked out like a horse on so many medications. Maybe 2 months into it, the clouds lifted and I finished out my senior year. 2015, I had moved back to my parents' house on Long Island to save money because I was writing. I was writing for a blog and I was working from home. So I said to myself, well, this is the last time I'll probably have a chance just to save money. And maybe I could bank a year just living at my parents' house. For me, I'm sure with your mental health, you have to learn about like what your triggers are. For me, isolation is a trigger. So if I don't have socialization for a while, if I'm just sitting at home myself, it could trigger depression. And boy, did it trigger significant depression. I was also, this is a long story, I was also taking Ambien, which is a bad thing. So I was on Ambien, a couple other things, and this was May 2015. For the first time in my life, I was just starting to think, not like developing a plan, but like suicidal thoughts. So I said something at the time to my mom, who I'm pretty close with. I went to a psychiatrist. They put me inpatient for a while, like you said, and I was between two mental health facilities. I was hospitalized for a month before they got me on the right medication. Problem was, the medication was wonders for my depression. It destroyed my stomach. As the years went on, I had just horrendous constipation, not to be TMI, but just to the point where I wasn't going. And obviously that backs you up. The moral of this story is last year I got off the medication because I said, oh, I'm feeling pretty good. And I'm on a low dosage of the medication. I was on like 75 milligrams of this antidepressant. And my psychiatrist, which, like you said, is wildly expensive. I had to go 3 times a year. It was $250 a session. Without it, didn't take insurance. He said, well, people are different. 5 years ago, your brain chemistry was this. A lot of people have depression, but years later can handle not being on medication. Well, I couldn't. And I got wildly depressed. And then it was just this game for months of getting back on, trying a different antidepressant. Constipation comes back. Getting on a different antidepressant. Constipation comes back. To the point where last year around Thanksgiving, I got off again and I just took like over-the-counter shit that had like serotonin stuff in it, but it just wasn't strong enough. And the moral of this story is I wasn't rationing because of money. I was trying to get off because I couldn't go to the bathroom like a normal person. But when I realized, you know what, I'm going to have to be on antidepressants for the rest of my life, and I'm just going to have to deal with the constipation or at least try different things. I got back on the medication and it took a while. It took like 5 weeks, but finally everything lifted. And by the way, I was doing like live streams and trying to put on a happy face while you know what depression is. So the moral of this story is I got off and it really fucked me up, but at least I could get back on because the money wasn't the problem. So just imagine, if you're in the audience, what she's saying. She was hospitalized not like 5 years ago. You're talking 2 years ago. For whatever it was, you finally have a medication that's lifted things a little bit and allowed you to be functional. And now you have to basically get off it, not because it's not working, but because you can't afford it. I mean, it's crazy that we live in a country and what you hear from everybody should have access. Well, you do have access. You just can't fucking afford it.
Right.
It's just crazy. Sorry to give that long-winded thing, but that was my experience.
No, that's okay. Yeah, and even speaking of it, I think I had shared with you that my son is also showing signs of mental health issues. That's really popped up within the last year. And he, like I said, does have health insurance through the state, but good luck finding anybody around here that, especially for mental health services, that are going to take state insurance, especially Illinois, because there were several years where the state wasn't paying their bills for like Medicaid users and stuff like that. So it created, I mean, there's just a ton of places that took away the option to use the healthcare. So not only me am I trying to navigate my own mental health with this medicine and trying to make sure that I'm able to stay stable. I'm also trying to, what do I do for my son who is only 8? Like, this is so early to be experiencing those kind of symptoms. And I just don't really know what to do with him because it's the same thing. I mean, they don't take insurance. And like I said, I can't afford it for myself, let alone to be able to take him somewhere. And it's so messed up. It's so messed up.
Absolutely. Can you kind of talk about, is this current thing where you're trying to wean yourself off the medication because you can't afford the doctors, this and that? Is it basically because of inflation? I know you, in your email to me, you were talking about food prices. Like, you're basically kind of limiting yourself on what you eat too because food prices are so expensive.
Yeah, I mean, so when I first decided to go off of it, I felt like I was in a place economically that even though it would be difficult, I would be able to figure it out. And then it's really been the last, like I said, 6 months that like the inflation piece has started to hit in, and it's a mixture of a lot of things. It's the inflation, it's the car going out at the wrong time, with all of that needs to be finished. It's just like a lot of different stuff. And like with the food, food prices have been going up slowly over the last couple months, and I was doing okay, kind of keeping within my budget. But then as soon as my son was on summer break, he got the free lunches and free breakfast at school. That really helps during the school year. And last year they had a program where they continued it through the summer, but this year they changed it. And now it's not through the school, it's through the city, but it's nowhere near my neighborhood, and it's in the middle of the day, and they make you sit there and eat the lunch in front of them. And I'm working all day. I can't drive across town. I can't spend a half an hour sitting there for you to watch him eat to make sure that, that he's not going to throw the food away. I don't know, or give it to somebody else. Like, I don't understand what the problem is, but anyway, so between, the food prices going up anyway, and just having all of a sudden having him home all day long, and having to feed, all of the meals without help, my grocery bill has like almost doubled since like March. And it is to the point where, like, the last couple days before I get paid again, we're getting creative with what kind of meals we're going to eat. And oftentimes either I find myself either just so stressed that I'm not hungry, or I look in the fridge and I'm concerned about if there's going to be enough food for my son to last till the end of the week. And so I decide not to eat, or maybe I just pick up his leftovers of whatever is, he's eating for dinner, just to like stave off the hunger and give me a little bit of something. But yeah, I mean, I've noticed, especially over the last couple of months, that as the prices and everything is hitting, that I'm subconsciously not eating in order to.
And I take it, correct me if I'm wrong, I take it since the father of your child and his family was trying to, I guess, get custody of your child, that he's not helping that much financially?
So it's actually my parents that were doing that with the custody.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. His dad is not in the picture. His dad hasn't been in the picture. His dad was very abusive, and is a lot of the reason actually why I have PTSD, because after I broke up with him, he kind of went nuts. So that's why I have the PTSD. But anyways, I had cut him out a long time ago. So it's just me. I don't have any support from anybody else.
And with your job, you mentioned your job. If you want to share what you do, you don't have to. Have they? A lot of these companies are price gouging right now. So is what you're doing? Are they making less money? Are they making more profit? Because it sounds like you're working in a job that isn't paying you enough to pay your bills.
Yeah. So I actually work in fraud for financial institutions. I had how fitting is that? Is lovely. Morally crushes my soul, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. But
Wait,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but
No, it's okay.
I had to.
Yes, I regret it. But anyways, yeah, no, I work in fraud for financial institution, and I used to work at a credit union, which made me feel better about my job at least. But the pay there was awful. So I finally last year decided it was time, you know, especially part of the reason I couldn't really get a new job when I was going through my mental health struggles was because my job was like the only stable thing that I had at the time. And there was just no way I was going to get a new job and be able to perform in the way that I normally can perform. So it was like, once I got out, I was in a good place. I can get a new job. So I did go get this new job. I won't say what company it is, but it is one of the like, you know, fuckers. But you know, and they pay way better than anybody else does, you know, as far as what I'm doing. But I mean, the bar is so low that even if you're paying me, you know, 2 or 3 times what the minimum wage is, I mean, nowadays it's nothing. Like that's what the minimum wage should be, is what I'm getting paid. So even though it sounds great, like I got this great raise and, you know, things are looking up, like it ended up not like really doing anything because I got offset by all of these other expenses. So even though I'm making more, I'm basically in the same spot that I was prior to this job.
And also, I mean, at the end of the day, you're living an hour from Chicago. Chicago is crazy expensive. The suburbs around it are not cheap. Well, I should say, excuse me, the gentrified part that they've made beautiful in Chicago is expensive. But even the parts outside that they've left to rot are still, you know, getting more expensive. And it's kind of, I think people need to realize that the two things are connected. So even if you don't technically have like a mental health problem and we all have our issues, but you don't have a mental health problem per se, economic stress could really, there's a thin line between economic stuff and mental health. A lot of people with economic problems, you know, you're talking about getting off medication that you probably shouldn't be getting off medication for economic reasons, eating less. I mean, that could really fuck up your mental health for sure. Can you kind of talk about that? Like right now, fortunately, you've been coping mental health wise, but are you worried that, because one of my fears has always been like, I don't want to ever go back to that place I was in years ago.
Yeah.
Where I was hospitalized.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly probably like my greatest fear is that I'm ever going to relapse and be so far down in that same place. So while I'm thankful and I feel okay right now, I am coping. I'm very, very scared, especially not seeing, you know, if there was light at the end of the tunnel, it was only going to be a couple months, I'd be fine. But there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And it seems like every couple weeks, things are just getting worse and worse, you know, whether in my personal life or just even like economically with the nation. And I don't know what I do. Like once I finally get off this medication, I don't know how I'm going to react to that. If I stay on, you know, even the fact that I'm rationing it right now is not, I don't know what that's doing. I'm very scared about any impacts that could have. You know, right now I'm in my house and I'm okay, at least for now. But if things don't change in the next 6 to 12 months, I'm going to be moving again. And I've seen the rent prices, how they've gone up just over the last 2 years. And I see the gentrification plan that the city is doing right now. Like they're very open and obvious about it. So, you know, yeah, okay, I can just move to another house that maybe I don't pay as much. But by the time I find another house, it's going to be the same as this. And you're talking about a lack of housing, you hear about like the rent wars and stuff that happen in like San Francisco and stuff like that. And that's what I'm scared of. I'm scared that I'm going to get kicked out of this place and I'm not going to have anywhere to go. And, once you start, I can handle where I'm at now, but once you start throwing that kind of stuff in it, like that's a huge wrench in your life to lose your house and to have to wonder where you're going to go. And I did have a conversation with my son about it the other day, and he's not cool with the idea of moving, even when I just kind of momentarily brought it up to see how he would react. Like, he did not have a good reaction. And also the other big thing too is the schools that I'm around are some of the better schools in our city. The other two school districts are very underfunded. They don't have a lot of resources. There's a lot of kids that go in there that need help that don't get the help that they need. And because of my son, he has ADHD as well, on top of the mental health things that I've seen from him. And the school that we're at has amazing programs and resources that they have been able to help him and spend a little bit more one-on-one time with him. To help him through some of the challenges he's having in school due to his ADHD and mental health. So that's the other thing that I'm terrified of, is if I move somewhere else where I can't afford the house, what about the school district? And what about my son? Is he going to be able to get the resources that he needs? If he doesn't get the resources he needs, how does that affect his mental health? Which, of course, all of that in turn affects my mental health, because as a parent, it's awful. It's awful to see your kid speak about how they see life and see them struggle and not be able to give them the stability or to keep them in a place where they have resources and friends. And I don't know. Yeah. So I'm if things don't turn around, which I don't expect them to at this point, especially since we already see a recession coming. And the other thing too with my job is I'm technically contract right now. When I applied for the job, I had an interview with the VP of the department, who told me that as long as I met my quality scores, that they would for sure hire me on full time. But now that the recession is coming and it seems like the bank is kind of playing some games, I actually don't know if they're going to hire me on. Which means that I also have this question mark around my job. Am I going to have a job in January? Am I going to have to look for another job? Am I going to be able to keep, there's just so many variables that I don't know what's coming, and I'm terrified. I'm terrified. And like I said, my son's already been through so much that if I were to have another like breakdown with my mental health, I don't know how he's going to get through it. So, yeah.
I'd like to ask, because, the reason I do this, and by the way, these are the type of interviews, they'll never go viral. YouTube's not going to recommend them, because YouTube exists not to show any of this. Of course, corporate media doesn't want to show any of this, because then people would be outraged if the masses saw this is how so many are living.
Right.
But I wonder, you don't seem like a hardcore political person to me. Like, you said, you gave Biden a chance in the beginning. You like some of the things you heard. So as somebody who isn't like, maybe I'm wrong, but isn't like a die in the wool burner, like Bernie girl, but just somebody who's like living, you're not like, you don't have the luxury of like being hardcore either side. What does it say to you that it just seems to me this president acts like he is powerless? Like he got in there. Well, first of all, we were told, if you were paying attention, this is the guy who could get stuff done. Mm-hmm. He gets in there and immediately makes an excuse why we can't put a $15 minimum wage into a bill, because some unelected parliamentarian said we can't. Right. So then forget, the term public option. He ran on a public option, which would probably help you right now, healthcare wise. That's gone. He ran on $2,000 checks. Never happened. I mean, I could go down the list. Police reform, so many things. And everything's an excuse. Oh, well, mansion and cinema doesn't even try to pressure them publicly. What does it say to you? Because it's kind of like we're in this cycle again. Well, now it's, and I'm not minimizing it. You know, obviously the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade is catastrophic and all that. But now they're saying they're always saying vote. Well, you did vote. You did vote. So what does it say to you that now they're saying if you just give us 2 more senators, so Manchin and Sinema will have enough votes to go around them. All right, if they have too much, if you give the Democrats control of the Senate and 2 more senators, you believe they're going to pass a $15 minimum wage? You believe they're going to pass anything on healthcare? You know, what does it say to you that basically they're not doing much? I know the Republicans are awful, but they're not doing much of anything.
Yeah. So I haven't been like a super duper political person. I have definitely gotten more radicalized over the last couple of years, especially seeing what has happened in my own experiences. But, you know, I wasn't happy that Biden was the nominee in the first place. I did want Bernie. Or, you know, at the time I was okay with Yang, you know, he was at least fucking better than anybody else, in my opinion. But, you know, so when Biden got elected, it was kind of like, whatever, you know, whatever, like at least it's not Trump. And I did have, even though I didn't want him, I did have some faith in the way that he was talking, that he did actually see and understand the gravity of the moment and that maybe he would do something. So, you know, he got in there, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. He did that first COVID thing, which of course there was already issues, like you said, with the $15 minimum wage being taken out of it. And then, you know, they didn't do the $2,000 checks, they did the $1,400. And it's like, okay, well, okay, whatever, you know, but then it's like, what the fuck has happened since then? I mean, we watched Build Back Better, the negotiations around that was a total joke. And, you know, it's just laughable to me, this guy who has spent most of his career trying to be president and now he's president. And it's like, dude, where the fuck are you? Like, why did you want this position so badly for most of your life? And now you're in here and you're not doing anything. Like, it's mind blowing how much of a failure he is right now. Mind blowing. And you're right. I mean, the Republicans are awful. They're awful, but you know, they're doing this whole vote for Democrat thing. And I'm thankful that it seems like some people are starting to wake up to that. But I have absolutely no hope after the first 2 years of this administration that the next 2 years are going to be anything different or that we're going to get anything out of him.
Right.
Yeah.
And being that you're a Bernie person, I mean, I got to tell you, I've never been like, hey, hashtag fraud squad. Like, I think it's kind of whatever. I mean, I'm a journalist, so I'm not like jumping on hashtags for that. But I got to tell you, I mean, there's not much opposition to this neoliberalism right now. Even Bernie's kind of asleep. They're not holding protests at the White House and rallying activists about inflation. There's several things Biden could do on inflation. AOC just wrote Chuck Schumer a letter asking him to declare that that these Supreme Court justices lied under oath. A letter she's writing to Chuck Schumer that they lied under oath. There's been a lot of letters to Biden asking him to do things. Ro Khanna's out there, you know. Nobody should primary Biden. That's detrimental. Bernie came out. I'm not going to run if Biden runs, and shocker, Biden invited him over for dinner at the White House the next night. I mean, I bring this up because I don't think we should have any heroes. You know, I'll credit Bernie and them when they deserve credit, but I don't even see them agitating at all, really, Biden right now. And it's the same shit. Well, we don't want to help the Republicans win, but people knocked on doors for these progressives because they, you know, for a lack of, well, no, literally, she said, we're going to bring the ruckus to the Democratic Party. So what are your thoughts on that? Because you're clearly not getting what you need from Biden, but you're not really having any advocates for you necessarily in DC right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I still support the squad. I was never the hashtag fraud squad in the beginning. You know, I'm very much, I like to give people the benefit of doubt. I want to see what they're going to do. But the squad and progressives, Bernie, all of them, biggest betrayal. I mean, it's worse than what Biden's done. At least we knew Biden's record. At least we, you know, even though he tried to lie to everybody and pretend like he was going to be something that he was never going to be. at least we knew that that's who Biden was versus the progressives who, you're right, have been completely missing in action since the beginning. Even that, like the first thing with the COVID bill and the $15 minimum wage, like that should have been progressives putting their foot down and saying like, okay, you won and we're here and we're going to get these things that you said you were going to do. And the fact that they, that was just like one of the first instances where they let it down, and it's been nothing since that, or nothing more than that since then. And, like you said, they love sending letters and they love making their little tweets, but that doesn't, whether I agree with their letters or their tweets, that doesn't do anything to change the lives of people. And so it's no better than the same theater we're getting from everybody else. I was encouraged that AOC was willing to accept the criticism that she got about the Amazon labor union stuff, and came back out, the next weekend or whatever it was, and did do a rally there with Bernie. But even, what's happened since then? Like, we have to all attack you on the internet to get you to do the simplest thing. That's literally your job.
And I think, people aren't really expecting them to wave a magic wand.
Right.
They're not president. They're not, they don't have, but to literally fight and just agitate and kind of what Shama Sawant does in Seattle really well. So yeah, I understand that. My last question simply is, what's your message out there? Because honestly, a lot of my viewers, not the same story, but similar stories of economic insecurity. I've been when I've shared like stuff about my depression, there's a lot of people in the channel audience that have had depression, anxiety, bipolar. People have reached out to me privately. Just like, what's your message to people watching? Because frankly, inflation gets covered like it's an acute thing, and it's like it's here now, but it will be better. We've had inflation for 20 years. It's called gentrification. It's just not called inflation. But like, what the fuck is gentrification, which I call economic terrorism? It's pricing people out of where they live, and that's fucking scary. That's scary if you're going to be priced out of where you live and you don't know where. You're saying, when I look at prices elsewhere, it's I can't afford it either. So, what's your message to people that maybe not the same exact situation you're dealing with, but have some similar economic stresses right now?
So I would say for the mental health piece of it, anybody that's dealing with mental health issues, I just hope that you know that you're not alone, and I know it's very hard to get resources, but there are resources out there if you do have health insurance. I know people get scared of the stigma that comes with being hospitalized or getting help, but it really can change your life if you are able to do that. If you're not able to do that, like I said, just know that you're not alone. There are support groups out there that are free. And again, I know that that's scary too, but that's something that I did that really did help me to be able to meet other people who could empathize and recognize that what I was going through. Also, as far as the economic piece of it, obviously that's intermingled, but I would say on that piece is just know that it's not your fault. The media and the politicians, they want, everything is about individualism and everything is about, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and we're not going to give you a handout and blah, blah, blah. And that can be very psychologically damaging to people. And it can make you feel like things are your fault when they're really not. I feel all the time, I struggle with the shame of my situation and feeling like I am unable to get out of where I'm at and this rut that I'm in. But I think it's just very, very important to remember that we are not victims, but we are victims of a system that has been going on for a long time that has purposely put us in these economic and mental strains. And again, I just really want to stress to people that no matter what you're dealing with, like, it really is not your fault. And it's maddening. My heart goes out to anybody that's struggling. Like, it's maddening what they're doing. And I just hope that everybody is able to, recognize that it's not your shame to carry, and to maybe be able to find people to talk about who can validate what you're going through and might be going through similar situations.
Or as Nancy Pelosi says.
But I have to say, we're capitalist. And that's just the way it is.
Just have to add a little levity. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time. What I want to do also in some of these interviews, and people can offer what they can. It's sad that we have to do this in America, but yeah, we'll talk separately. If you have a Cash App or something like that, and if people could, some way, people could maybe throw a couple bucks to you to help. It's not going to, lift you out of this, but maybe take the edge off a little bit. So I'll get that information. We're going to cut this separately and post it as its own video. So I'll put that in the description so people can help. And yeah, folks, this is why Status Coup does what it does. I mean, we just had a call earlier. People, me, Colin, Dean, and Lewis, just like, how the fuck do we grow this goddamn channel? Because these kind of stories do not, YouTube doesn't recommend us if we're not covering January 6th and Trump and Rudy and, the trend of the day. YouTube's algorithm, actually, if you're covering stuff like this, that's substantive, they will not recommend it. So it's kind of this really double-edged sword of, this is so important to do these kind of stories. That's why we're going on the road next week to talk to people like Allie. But YouTube isn't going to recommend it. They're not going to share it. So I need everybody to share these far and wide, share these stories on our Twitter, post your own social media posts with these clips once we make shorter videos. If you can, support Status Coup, because obviously we need to keep the lights on and pay people so we could do these kind of stories. Because, talking to people like Allie is actually detrimental to us as a business. It's not going to go viral. It's not. And that's why most outlets don't do it. They don't do substantive stuff because it doesn't get the clicks. It doesn't go viral. But this is why I do this. I'm not doing this for clicks or to go viral. So anyway, Allie, thank you for taking the time. I know it's not easy to talk about yourself. And yes, YouTube promotes drama. It's not easy to talk about yourself and mental health stuff and all that. And yeah, if you're in the audience, this is what we're looking for. So we're getting on the road next week. We're going to be driving at the moment. We think Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, maybe hit Michigan. If I'm really feeling frisky, maybe Chicago. So if you got a story on the Northeast, the Midwest, email us, info@statuscoup.com, because I'd love to do as many in-person interviews as I can. And everyone's got a story. You might be really fucked right now from inflation. Could be a mental health thing that's connected, like Allie is talking about here. Hey, economic problems cause marital problems, alcoholism, mental health challenges, you name it. So if you got a story, email us, info@statuscoup.com. Can't cover every story, but I could try. AIM, does Allie have a GoFundMe? Yeah, I'm going to talk to Allie. We'll set something up, either if she has a Cash App or a PayPal or something. And yeah, everybody, obviously you guys aren't rolling in it, but if everybody could chip in like a couple bucks, that makes a big difference. So thank you, Allie.
Thank you, Jordan. And to anybody who's thinking about donating to that, I just want to say I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you after this.
Sounds good.
So, yeah, that was really powerful, and it really connected with me because I'm in a position that I'm not in that position, even though to a certain degree I had a similar situation where I got off medication that I very much need to be me. Everybody's different. I know some people poo-poo, like you shouldn't take antidepressants. For me, that's the only thing that has worked to keep my mood and, depression under control throughout my life is medication. I've tried therapy. That's good. But for some people, it's basically, I basically compare it depression is very similar to being a diabetic. It's just in the mind. If you're type 1 diabetic, you need insulin. And a lot of people who have depression need medication because they're short of certain things. In this case, too low on serotonin. So, but I can't imagine having to basically stop taking my medication because I feel okay now. Well, a big reason people feel okay is because they're taking the medication. But she's having to wean herself off the medication for economic reasons. Like, that's crazy in a in the greatest country on earth and, the shining city in a hill and a booming economy. Give me a fucking break. We're living in an economic Hunger Games, and she's describing it. And that's why we have the flag. Chris says, Jordan, I'm on antidepressants too, as well as other medications. I might be dead without my job insurance and making enough to afford meds. That's a huge, let me tell you, when I was at MSNBC, I wanted out of there pretty quickly, but I didn't leave because I needed that health insurance. How many of you have been or are in dead-end jobs where your soul is slowly dying, but you need that health insurance for you and your family? It's crazy. And this is what they call freedom. And by the way, let's be clear. Let's be clear. Sorry if I'm triggering the COVID is over people. Even through a deadly pandemic, where over 1 million people have died. I think it's closer to 1.2, 1.3 million. And still we don't have universal health care, even after what we have gone through with COVID and are still going through. Do you know how many people I've talked to have said, yeah, I felt like shit, but I didn't want to go get a test because now it's cost money. Or it was supposed to be free, but I got charged for it. You know how many people, Biden, by the way, during the 2020 Democratic primary in a debate said, COVID treatment free. There's people getting hit with medical bills from their hospital stays for hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So support us if you can. I mean, like I said, we're hitting the road next week. This stuff costs money. I got to fly Colin up to me. Then we're driving. Gas is going to be pricey, but we're driving through multiple states. We're going to be, food, hotels. It costs money. I mean, we're lucky if we get away with $3,000 for a reporting trip. And that's staying like at normal hotels, like, a Hilton or a Days Inn or a Marriott. We don't stay at like the Plaza Hotel or anything. So support us if you can. That's statuscoup.com/join. Colin, do we have the new trailer?
Yes, I can. Give me just a half a sec.
Yeah, so we just Lewis actually put this together. This is our new trailer because I think a lot of people, when they hear the word Status Coup, which by the way we're considering, don't freak out, but we're considering changing the name because I think, unfortunately, when we launched Status Coup, there wasn't an actual coup attempt. So that's kind of put a damper on things because I think a lot of people are unfortunately confused with the name, and unfortunately, some people that hear the name that are new think we might be with that and the coup thing. So we're not sure, but we're thinking about changing the name just to make it more clear what we are. I wish it wasn't that way, but it unfortunately, when we launched in 2018, we weren't expecting a coup attempt in America. But, we made this new trailer just so when people come to the channel, it's abundantly clear. It's abundantly clear what we are. So if you haven't seen this trailer, let's take a look.
Congratulations for always being somewhere where mainstream media is not.
Jordan Sheridan live, Status Coup in Ottumwa, Iowa, in front of Winter Park High School, Buffalo, New York. Here in Louisville, Kentucky. Here in Flint, Michigan. This was fire. This was absolute fire.
I don't know if Manchin is delusional or if he thinks we're that stupid.
They ran the water for 10 minutes and they told her, oh, the water's fine. But meanwhile, the baby's got blisters everywhere.
When I turn my water on now, you can smell it.
I cry every day because my baby's skin break out. And I feel like that's just not right. They shouldn't have to go through this.
I smell the water as of 6 months ago. It smells like shit, but they say it's safe. They say it's clean.
You intentionally went to her house illegally to serve that illegal warrant. You intentionally murdered her, period.
Since the pandemic, you've been having people getting kicked out of their houses, coming to the park, living under the bridge, and I've been one of them.
We had a pension that was about a third of our predecessors. We had no post-retirement health care.
But in a lot of ways, corporate media had us believing that we're just lucky to have a job.
Of course, parents should have certain rights when it comes to education, but their rights shouldn't endanger students. They know what they're doing, and they are trying to kill us.
It takes everything I've got to keep my skin on my bones from taking a shower and that shit.
Well, it's been 8 years, man. It's been 8 fucking years. I can't take it. My health has gone to hell, and if I die because of this, I'm dead. I'm dead.
Our lives didn't matter at all, and they still don't.
There's a lot of people that are homeless Amazon workers.
Right. At last count, there were about over 100 cars. They're here 24/7. And I feel for them, I'm one of them, so, you know.
If back to normal means we're back to being underpaid, it means we're back to being worked like dogs, it means that they're back to harassing homeless people, you can keep your fucking normal.
So they are now the first unionized Amazon in the country. We covered this from day one when none of these media folks were out here. We were here a year ago. Support this on-the-ground reporting. Please support this reporting. Do you see anybody else doing what we're doing? We care enough to show up. Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday. So that was our new trailer. It's about 3 minutes, so do me a favor and click on it. It's now on the homepage of our YouTube page. Definitely give it a click so we could get the views up and all that. I think Lewis did a good job on that. I kind of annoyed him like I do Colin normally with a bunch of edits. But I think that tells the story of who we are pretty well. And, you know, people get the point that we primarily try to do on the ground reporting on stories other people are not covering. So thank you guys for watching. Let me read some super chats before I go. Leslie, $2. Thank you, Leslie. Big Dumb Animal, $5. Thank you. Dave, $5. Rent control is the fight we should be gearing up for. Couldn't agree more, actually. Peace, $10. Jordan, I can't put into words how much I appreciate you, Colin, and everyone else that makes Status Coup happen. Bless you all. Thank you, Peace Walker. Aim Williamson, $5. Thank you, Aim. Appreciate that. I don't think I missed any. So that is the super chats for today. Did I miss any, Colin? We're good.
We're good.
Okay. And again, let me make sure I didn't miss anything as far as people signing up, because I like to give shout outs when we have new members. Speaking of, no new members today. If you're watching and you're on the fence, sign up. StatusCoup.com/join. We are going to try and do the members call either tomorrow or Thursday. I'm leaning towards Thursday night. We would be doing our monthly members call. So if you're a member, you know the drill. You'll get the Zoom link. So that's StatusCoup.com/join. And if you're a member, you'll get the link to join our Zoom call. We usually go about an hour and a half. Applies for patrons too. If you're a patron, you'll get the link too. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys back at it tomorrow.